Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we're going over my most used knives. This is kind of an off-the-cuff video, but I thought it'd be an interesting topic. So before we get into the actual knives themselves, I have a bunch over here. A bunch. I just kind of want to talk about what I mean by most used. Because every single knife that I own gets used. I don't have any safe cleans. I don't have any knives that are so special I won't beat on them. I won't use them. Of course, every knife gets used differently to the purpose I think it best fits. But what I mean by most used are the knives that I have carried, abused, used for just everything. You know, some of these knives, yeah, I said abused, but some of these knives could be knives that I just carried a lot and opened a bunch of packages. I cut up a bunch of cardboard. I just had it when I needed it. And yeah, so the length of time that I've had these knives doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most used. It can certainly help in some of these instances, but it's just what I've used the most. Now, obviously, since I'm trying to be a knife reviewer, I get to carry, I carry a bunch of different stuff. Some of it stays with me, and some of it goes away. But, you know, my use does kind of fluctuate a little bit on, you know, I do switch out knives all the time. But there are some knives that I consistently drop in my pocket, whether I'm going to work or just carrying for myself that day. So, yeah. And, by the way, pocket check. This is the Dam Designs Cerberus. Love this knife. If we were to do this list if I were to update this list in 6 months, this knife would be on it. You know, I think this knife would definitely be on it. Great, great knife. So, I'm going to go all the way back. I said most used knives, and I meant most used knives in my life. So, for as long as I've been using knives, you guys are going to get to see a little bit of the good, the bad, the great, and the ugly of my knife collection. So, I'm kind of excited. All right. Yeah, let's jump right in. I've been a knife person, knife guy, I guess, for as long as I can remember. Knives have always been a part of my life. I've always grown up in kind of a rural area. My dad's a large animal veterinarian, so you know he uses a lot of knives for necropsies, and I just always had knives around. There's always knives around. So the first knife we're gonna go over. Oh boy, this is actually the very first knife I ever bought with my own money. I was 11 years old, and I had knives before this, but they're long gone now, like Swiss Army type knives that I had in Scouts and stuff. But I don't know where they are. They've been lost over the years. But this was the very first knife I bought with my own money. This Frost Cutlery Avenger. And, yeah. There it is. Not an unattractive looking knife, I'll be honest. I did actually go back just about a year or so ago, and I actually made some modifications to this knife. Sintered him. I took out his washers and polished them and cleaned them, lubed him up, fixed his detent a little bit, put a bronze washer in there with the plastic, and yeah, pretty good action now. But yeah, if you can see this blade, this knife went through everything that a 11-year-old boy puts a pocket knife through, and we've all done it when we got our first knives, or you know, when we're kids, throwing them at trees. You go out and you try and baton, and yeah, lockup is at 100%. But yeah, this knife definitely does hold sentimental value for me. Carried this for a long, long time. Great little knife. Okay, moving on. Oh, there's actually a knife that I forgot to bring out here. It's a Gerber mini Paraframe that my dad gave me when I turned 12. I actually use that knife a lot with this guy. I carry them together. Next knife, we'll go on to this one. See if I can flick him. Ouch. Whatever. So this, it says Snowblind on it. I cannot remember the brand of this knife. I carried this knife for a long time. I got this knife actually at a scout camp. I think I was about 13. My dad was actually the scout master, and so our little troop, we had a tiny troop, and all of us were a bunch of rednecks, and we were quite the troop. But there at the little trading post they had at the scout camp, they were selling knives. And I remember, I was the youngest member of the troop, actually. I remember all the other guys, they bought this knife, and everyone at the camp was buying this knife. And they were selling out fast. So when I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, please, 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 can I buy this knife? My dad's like, do you have the money for it? I was like, yes. Well, okay, well, you know, you can get it. So I remember I thought it was the coolest thing ever. You know, the flipper tab, there's no detent. But, you know, I thought, we all thought we were so cool doing the little, you know, the wrist. We were sitting there like, we thought we were so cool. You know, in retrospect, this is kind of a really dumb idea for a knife, camo blade and handle. If you're outdoors and you drop this, you may never find your knife again. But, yeah, so there's that knife. As you can tell, the lock stick. As you can tell, it's been sharpened quite a few times. This is not how the blade originally looked. In fact, this is the knife that I practiced most of my sharpening on. You know, used this knife for a long, long time. Bent the clip out at one point and had to fix it. Just really loved this knife when I was a teenager. So there's that guy. What's rattling in there? Oh, it's just the clip. Next, we'll go on to, which one do I want next? Where did it go? I thought I had it here on the table just a second ago. Ah, there he is. So next we have this little Sheffield. Not going to say a whole lot about this. Bought this knife when I was, again, younger. In fact, I think when I bought this one, I was probably about 14 or something. I don't know. But this was really my first EDC Tanto. It's a frame lock. And, yeah, that was that. Carried him a long time. Cut open hay bales and put him to good use. I guess something I should mention, that don't really have to do anything with knives, but I actually moved around quite a bit as a kid. And so I remember with this knife, when I moved here to northern New Mexico, back to my father's hometown, got a lot of family here, and one of my close friends was my cousin Austin. You guys have seen him on the channel before, and he was into knives too, as most teenage boys are. And I remember actually picking this knife up because he had one, or he picked one up because I got one. I can't remember, but anyways, we had a lot of parallel collecting for quite a while. So yeah, I used that guy for a while. Stopped using this knife when he started to not lock up. He was having consistent failure of lock engagement. So I stopped using him, and I bought this knife. Oh my gosh. Doesn't that just look beautiful, right? Look at this blade play. So I remember even when I was a teenager, I realized that I was going through knives fast. You know, this one I stopped carrying because it wouldn't lock up anymore and the clip bent out. Stopped carrying this one because the clip bent out. Forgot to mention, but I stopped carrying this knife because one time me and my friends were throwing it at a tree, and one of the plastic washers inside just ripped in half, fell out, and the blade just rattled around. So, and I didn't know how to fix it back then. So, yeah. But anyways, I realized that my knives were falling apart, and it bothered me. But I kind of thought that that was just the way it was. A lot of people that I knew, my grandpa and people with their pocket knives, they used it till they couldn't anymore, and then they tossed it in the junk drawer and went and bought another one. You know, that's just kind of how things were done. Or like my dad, for years and years, and he still does it, he just carried one of those little exchange-a-blade folding razors. You know, I was never really big on those. But there were things about knives that would bother me. One thing that bothered me about this knife was that it was not centered. And again, you know, these are things that I just thought you had to deal with. This is a spring-assisted knife. So much blade play. And I just thought I thought that was just, you know, well, it's a folding knife. It's not a fixed blade, so there's going to be some movement. I was wrong. Anyways, this knife is, gosh, I think 10 bucks. Carried this knife for a long, long time. And yes, I cut myself and injured myself with all of these at different points, unfortunately. So, next, of course, that knife started to go out. The problems I had with it just started bugging me to no end. I couldn't stand it anymore. So I went out and I upgraded. You know, this is a little no-name. It was in a blister pack from a Tractor Supply, no brand type knife. So I went and I decided that I was getting into the big leagues and I was going to buy a branded knife. Trade, baby. And actually, got 2 of them. It was a set. And I carried them both together, one in my right pocket, one in my left. As you do. So these are the knives. So this one has a partially serrated blade. And this one is just a plain edge. So I carried these knives for a long time, and I was very happy with them. And I'll say, actually, to this day, the ergos on this knife are very good. The jimping is nice. No idea what the steel is. The lockup was good. These handles are kind of like a very grippy, rubbery plastic thing. It actually feels really good. It's very, very solid. But, yeah, use these for a long time. Beat the snot out of them. You know, the flipper got no detent. Thumb studs worked a lot better. You know, of course, back then I thought, a flipper that's not assisted, you have to wrist flick. But, yeah, this one actually, again, about a year ago, during the whole Rona, when the whole Rona deal first started, I got bored and I decided to pull out a bunch of my old knives and try and fix them up. And this one, I replaced the washers with phosphor bronze and tuned the detent. Tried to fix it. The one thing, he used to be centered, but after I made these changes, not centered at all. But the action, yeah, still not good. Thumb stud action on this one, though, is very snappy. Oh my gosh. Did you hear that? Yeah, that's nice. And yeah, not assisted, so see if I can get that middle finger flick. Whatever. So yeah, I carried those knives for a long time. Really loved them. They got me through high school. Those over there. Okay, what do we want to look at next? Okay, the knife that replaced those 2 knives. Yes, it was a... Uh-oh. Someone's trying to call me. Get out of there. Okay. Got it fixed. Scam likely. I love that guy. He always checks in on me. So the knife I replaced those ones with, when, you know, they started to get a little bit gritty and just, you know, honestly was getting bored of them. Uzi. And I bought this knife, I think, the end of my junior year of high school. Something like that. Yeah, it's a pretty wicked looking knife, isn't it? And I will say, to this knife's credit, perfectly centered, thumb stud and flipper deployment, they both work. It is assisted, of course. It was pretty sharp out of the box. G10 and steel, both G10 scales, steel bolsters, steel liner lock. Ergos are not bad, actually. They're really not. This is another one that Austin and I got together. We both had this knife. His was actually a non-combo edge, and it had gray instead of the brown. I don't know why I got the combo edge, because I don't usually go for combo edges. But yeah, I carried this knife for a long, long time. It did really well for me. When I was fixing up all my old knives, I thought I'd try and, take this clip from a tip down and mount it tip up with those screws. Didn't work. These holes aren't drilled deep enough, but yeah. It's a pretty cool knife. Yeah. So yeah, the Uzi tactical rescue knife saw me through high school. And when I graduated high school, and I was heading off for my first year of college, I thought, you know what? I wanted to get something special. I just graduated high school. I want to get something special, kind of treat myself. And I decided that I was going to go and get some knives. And there were two knives that I had seen that I really wanted. And we will get into them right now. The first one was a knife that I had seen basically my whole life. In Walmart display cases and at sporting goods stores and stuff like that. And that was the Crkt Fossil. You guys know me. I am big into paleontology, studying it. So the Fossil, this just seemed like such a great knife for me. It was perfect, right? So I bought this knife, and this was my very first knife with ball bearings. I remember getting this knife, and I remember flipping it, and I was like, oh, assisted, that's pretty cool. And then I unlocked it, and I was like, what? I was like, huh, that is so weird. And yeah, I was just confused. So I carried this guy for a long, long time. Not a long, long time. Anyways, the knife I bought that same day that I bought that knife, Gerber flat iron. And yeah, these are the two knives that I took to college with me. So let's go back to the Fossil for a second. So this knife really did interest me. I had no idea what was going on in this knife. What's wrong, boy? Come here, Tarnish. Get the dog over here. Hi, buddy. How are you? Hey, boy. Where's that old deer leg? Go get it. Go get your deer leg. No kisses, no kisses. Alright, get down, boy. Get down. So, yeah, this knife kind of confused me. And so I went to YouTube and I looked up Crkt Fossil. And just watched a bunch of videos on this knife. And I started learning so much. And that's how I got into knife YouTube. And, yeah, so I have the Crkt Fossil to thank for introducing me into the larger knife community, really. And so I learned about things like bearings and steel and all kinds of stuff. I remember just binge watching Nick Shabazz and Metal Complex and a bunch of different people. And, yeah. Really, really cool. My one big problem with this knife is I need to put Loctite in there because the pivot comes loose really easily and it gets off center. So, I also obviously started looking up videos about the flat iron. because, you know, I had it. I wanted to know if it was any good. And I was hearing people, there's a lot of people who are mixed about this. A lot of people are like, oh, it's great. Oh, it's terrible. I was like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. I'll have to figure it out for myself. So I've told the story before in other videos, but I'm going to tell it again because, you know, I've gotten a lot of subscribers since those older videos. So maybe some of the new people like to hear this story. But, crazy dog. One night, I got in from classes, and it was towards the evening time. So I get back to my dorm, and I sit down, and I do some work on my computer real quick at my desk. And I had my keys for my room, my car, and everything on a carabiner on my belt loop. And I'm sitting down on my rolly chair, and, you know, I do my work real quick. I stand up, and I decide I'm going to go get some dinner. So I stand up, and I leave. And unbeknownst to me, when I stood up, the ring that had my dorm keys on it got hooked in the chair and pulled off my carabiner. In fact, my whole carabiner was pulled off my pants. I didn't know. So I go out, close the door, it locks automatically, and I'm walking off, like, oh my gosh, where are my keys? I'm like, well, you know, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm starving, so I go and I eat. And I come back later that night, and I was hoping my roommate would be home to let me in. But he wasn't. He was off partying. And I said, well, geez, what do I do? It's like 9 o'clock at night. You know, I could go and ask for someone to come and let me into my dorm. I could go at the front desk, but they charge you for that. So I don't really want to do that. And so I took my Gerber flat iron out of my pocket, and, you know, I used this part like a screwdriver. I used the blade like a pry bar. I was able to take the screen off of my dorm window and wedge this underneath the actual window and pop that window open so I could crawl in from the outside and grab my keys. And I used this to put it back together. And, yeah. So this knife definitely has special memories for me. In fact, you can see I carry this knife so much that the tan G10 started to get blue from my my blue jeans. But yeah, I do have another one of these now. This one has developed so many problems. The blade play is unbelievable. Lock stick, just gritty. And so now I have one of the blue micarta D2 versions. Oh, and by the way, this is 7CR steel. And I have a whole video about the Gerber flat iron. You guys can go check back. It's one of my very first videos. It's quite a ways back, but yeah, you can check that out. Go to my Gerber playlist. But yeah, that's the flat iron and the Fossil. So those knives lasted me quite a while, and I had some other knives in between, specifically a Spyderco Tenacious, which I thought was really nice, and a fake Spyderco PM2, which was not so nice. But I didn't realize it was fake at the time. I have since remedied that problem. But eventually I did want to replace my tuna and flat iron, so I did. So the knife that I eventually ended up buying next was the Kuby Flash. Although back then it was not called the Kuby Flash, it was just the KU-158, I believe. Got it off Amazon for 25 bucks. And this was kind of my first knife with a super steel. I mean, up till then, you know, I had a lot of 8CR and 7CR and a bunch of trash. And this is D2. So I was really curious to test what the edge retention was. I wanted bearings because of that Fossil. You know, G10, it's blue. I like blue. And at this time, I was kind of putting together an EDC loadout. So I had, you know, my blue pin, my wallet, my phone case was blue. I got this knife because it was blue. I had a little blue flashlight. and, you know, just trying to feel cool. So, yeah, there it was. And of course, you know, I wasn't really comfortable spending a whole lot of money on a knife yet. But, yeah, this knife, to this day, I really like this knife. In fact, I reviewed it, well, I guess it was a good while ago. But, great knife. Good action, good ergos, nice slicey blade. I was really impressed with this knife. Really impressed with this knife. All right. Then I bought my first expensive knife. It was a Benchmade bug out. It's just one that I still use for size comparisons, and I carry that knife a lot. I don't have it here right now because shortly after buying that knife, I was at a yard sale and I found this. And I was watching a lot of Wrangler Star at that time, and I don't watch them too much anymore, but I was watching a lot of Wrangler Star. The Benchmade 940 became just this god tier knife that I needed. And yeah. So I saw this at a yard sale and I scooped it up for a very reasonable price. And I carried it for a long time down there at college. And even when I got back home, carried him a lot at, you know, here around the ranch. Went on a couple of cattle drives with me. It's a classic knife, guys. Classic. I do not carry this guy very much anymore. I don't know why. I think it's because the scales are a little bit too slick. Maybe I need to get a new 940 just to see if I'm still into it, I guess. See if it still turns me on. Okay, so yeah, now we're kind of done with the chronological order of knives, and I'm just going to start getting into knives that I've used a lot, knives that see a lot of use for me. So, in no particular order, we're just going to start grabbing stuff. Cut Scepter. Great knife. Great knife. This knife was actually with me during a move. I packed away all my other knives, but I kept this one, and I think it was a Qsp Praxis out. I use this guy more than the Praxis because I don't know, it's just very useful cutting a lot of tape, you know, cardboard, doing a lot of really fine detailed cutting. I liked it a lot. It's a great knife, inexpensive, good build quality, great action. Pretty simple. I should probably one day dye these scales because they are, you know, this my card is getting a little bit gross on that side. It's not really breaking in like my Micarta should. It's kind of not my favorite Micarta, but it's, you know, there it is. So that's pretty cool. And next up, kind of in the same size range, my Qsp Penguin. I love this knife. And in fact, this knife doesn't really see a lot of pocket time, but it gets a whole lot of counter time. And what I mean by that is sometimes, like, this knife will just go room to room with me. And, you know, I'll wake up one morning, and let's say I gotta open a package. You know, I'll just grab this off my nightstand, my desk, whatever, go open that package, and then, you know, walk out in the kitchen, just throw this on the counter. Later that day, let's say I'm making some food, I need to open, I don't know, a pack of bacon or something, and this happens to be laying there on the counter. Even if I have another knife in my pocket, grab this guy, get it open, we're done. So this knife does see a lot of use. Very easy to, you know, I can't believe I haven't done this yet, but this would be a great knife to, you know, buy 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and just keep them everywhere. Your glove box, your toolbox. What other boxes are there? But just stash them around your house so that when you need a blade, there's a penguin nearby. Very useful shape. Really, really great. My one complaint on it is the D2 doesn't seem to be as well heat treated as other D2s. So, yeah. Next. Oh, here's one I could have probably talked about when I was talking about the Kuby. I remember I had a drawing class, and we had to sharpen, our pencils and our charcoal sticks and all kinds of stuff. And I want to use my knife, but this was a little scary, right? And so this knife, this is interesting. This came out of one of those Kershaw holiday packs, and let's look at this. It's a snappy little knife. This thing is so snappy. Blade steel's like 3 CR or something. Not very good, but this knife was like, I think the cost of the whole pack was like $10, and there's like 4 or 5 different things in there, like 3 knives, a multi-tool, anyways, a bunch of stuff. Not a very expensive knife, but man, oh man, did this sharpen a lot of pencils. A lot. And I love this little knife. No pocket clip or anything. It's such a weird knife, but man, it's just so snappy. Running on Teflon. Just a really cool knife. Love it. Love it.